Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we talk about the Faschinemesser. This often misunderstood, I think, weapon/tool is usually broadly connected to pre-unification German states, although its design can be led back in time, its inspiration at least for its design, can be traced back to a French weapon, a model 1771, similar kind of short sidearm. This was the inspiration for a Prussian version of a sword, of a Faschinemesser, in 1787, if I'm not mistaken. And then this Prussian sword was taken as an inspiration by all other German states, or most other German states, with initial slight variations up to at least the mid of the 19th century, if not further down the line as well. So, how did a weapon like this become so prominent and so important, even though a lot of people don't even really consider it a weapon, and actually probably its main function would have been that of a tool? Well, at the end of the 18th century, we start seeing a shift in warfare, in Europe at least, and we see the need or the emergence of field defense systems, so to speak. These are connected obviously with the rise of better firearms. So while swords and edged weapons and line formation of armies still remains a thing for quite a long time, you start seeing the seeds of what is going to become, let's say, the trench warfare of World War I. So there's kind of, if you think about it, we can see it as a century over which the kind of entrenched, highly defended sections of the battlefield become more and more central to warfare as things go on. And the Faschinemesser comes as a tool mainly, but also as a weapon for last-ditch defense, to answer these needs of quick fortification. Its design is mainly meant to cut and chop, and it was mainly meant to be used for brush, small branches, greenery, and this kind of vegetation material. Lots of times I say it's a misunderstood weapon because we kind of see it as a machete used just to clear brush. But realistically, European warfare wasn't being fought in some jungle or dense forest by people, you know, like Vietnam-style war. So this vision of it almost as a machete is really not accurate, I think. The reason why armies and units needed a tool to cut vegetation was that this greenery and these small branches were then bundled together into big bundles, in German Fascines, which were used to cover and protect earth defenses. So sappers, miners, artillery troops as well, for example, would usually be involved in creating all kinds of rudimentary or old-fashioned trenches, and to preserve them maybe in bad weather, but even against musket balls or cannonballs, they'd usually be covered by these bundles of sticks and grass, like long vegetation and kind of stuff. So this is the initial function of the Faschinemesser as a tool. Obviously, it would have also functioned as a weapon in case of need, like once all defense was broken. And you can confirm that it was actually meant, at least initially, as a weapon primarily, in the fact that the Prussian version, the 1887, has a thumb ring. And the thumb ring obviously would only be a hindrance when using it as a tool, but was meant for combat. However, we can also see that in practice, people used it as a tool because most of the Prussian swords actually lack the thumb ring, which was usually removed already at the time by soldiers who did not want to have it digging into their side or into their thumb when using this tool. So we're talking about a weapon that is far from being just a long knife. It's a very functional weapon to the time and needs of armies in the period. And another proof of this you can see in the fact that the Faschinemesser actually evolved over time. So as we move into the 19th century, we start seeing more and more specialized versions with serrated blades, for example, versions with very thick blades, and all kinds of specialized versions of the Faschinemesser that need to answer new needs or new problems armies are facing. This, however, is not one of these specialized ones. This is a Saxon Faschinemesser. It's basically inspiration from the Prussian version, but it's a very late inspiration. So apparently the Saxon state decided really late to jump on the fortification and weapon/tool bandwagon. And by the time they adopted this in 1845, other states had already moved forward with these specialized versions we're talking about. So the Saxon Faschinemesser can be seen kind of as a bit of a relic of the past. It obviously still had its function, but was a weapon introduced based on a model from at least 50 years earlier. With that being said, let's dive into the details of this very interesting weapon. And here's the Faschinemesser. So the first thing you'll probably notice right away is the pretty bad condition of the blade. It's more cosmetic than anything. There's a lot of deposit. This is old rust. I've wiped it and cleaned it with Autosol and Ballistol multiple times, but a lot of that dark black, the concretion isn't gonna go away that easily. And I don't want to keep abrading it because that will probably remove too much material and actually damage the historical value of the sword, I would say. But yeah, this is the first thing that pops to the eye, I would say. The next is the shape of the blade. It's a very machete-like blade with a bit of a bulge towards the tip here, and then it moves to this hatchet tip. It looks like a machete blade, that's for sure, but it is not by any means. It's a thick and beefy blade. If we look here down at the ricasso area, you'll see that this is not a quick, it's a chopper, but it's not meant only to chop twine and twig, but potentially something a little more consistent than that. In terms of the blade itself, it's hard to tell if there is any marking or not. The marking, there is one leftover potentially of a mark here. Sorry, it's on this side. I think you can see, if I can get it in focus. There's a leftover here of what may be a K or an R, or may also be a crown, because for Saxon weapons, for these Saxon Faschinemessers, it was actually pretty common to have the Saxon crown stamped on this area, let's say, of the blade somewhere. We see it also reproduced on the quillin here. This is the Saxon crown I was mentioning. This you'll find often in this position. So if you see this, yeah, you know what it is. Now moving forward, on the crossguard we have this, which is an SLGR stamped into the crossguard with a couple of numbers there. There's a 5 and a 51. SLGR stands for Sächsische Leibgrenadier, or Leib, I'm not sure. However, it's a unit of grenadiers from the Saxon army, and this stands for the weapon that was used by them. This number may be, I don't know, like a line and unit or something like that, but I cannot decipher the exact details of the number. The Leibgrenadier unit had, by the way, a very interesting uniform, very flamboyant, bright red coat with bright canary yellow details, and white breeches and a big bearskin hat. So quite a unit to behold, I think, and they would have been equipped with this. Moving forward, the Faschinemesser, not only the Saxon ones, but in general, have this typical upturned kind of curve, upturned and downturned crossguard, which is reminiscent of older swords. And then we have this very comfortable grip, actually. It's surprisingly comfortable, which is made of different ribs in brass that kind of bulge out towards the end. And then we have this big pommel here and this little pommel cap, which is where you see the peen of the blade. Yeah, there we can see the blade is peened. This is very, very comfortable. And in terms of ways to determine a Saxon Faschinemesser from a non-Saxon one, from a Prussian one. For example, if you lack any indication or any writing or crowns, the Saxon ones have 17 of these ribs, whereas the original Prussian Faschinemesser would have had 18 of them. And also the Saxon quillen here, the crossguard, is a little more curved up and down than you would have seen on the Prussian version. So that's hopefully helpful to determine what Faschinemesser you have in your hands. And this is only, by the way, distinguishing Saxon from Prussian. There are many different ones for every different German state of the time. I will try cleaning this blade further because I think it deserves a little more love than this. But as I mentioned, I won't be using abrasive products. I think this is a good candidate for me to test the chelation process that I Post Sword talked about in some of his recent videos. That seems to work wonders at removing deposits while maintaining integrity of the blade. So I think this is going to be a perfect candidate for that kind of process, because I really don't want to remove any more material. So, as with all my videos, I hope you enjoyed this one, but beyond that, I also hope this helped you look at the Faschinemesser with different eyes. This is a weapon that I think deserves a bit more respect than what it often gets, since it's sometimes tough to identify, and since it's produced in such broad numbers, and since it's not a real weapon, a lot of people, I think, tend to look down on this. But this is far from being just a tool, as you would find in a shed in a farm. This is military technology response to military needs of the time. So it has a definite place in history of warfare, and I think it should be recognized. So as usual, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next sword video coming up soon.